Alright, once we have our material rendered, if you are rendering it at a window and you want to save your file, what I recommend is once you get to the window, there's a option here, tab, file, you go save or save a copy. You save, it's still loading so I can't do it, you gotta wait for that to finish. You go file, save, and you save it as a JPEG or a BIP or PNG. It's up to you. They all should work, and every program, every computer usually can handle those types. I don't know about TIFF. TIFF is plotting. PCX, I'm not sure about PCX or TGA. And you'd save it somewhere where you know you have all your material. So like desktop, but at school you might not want to save it on desktop. All right, so I exit out. What I want to do next is I want to do a countertop or some surface that the object is on, and then we're going to actually add a light to it, a spotlight. So to add a base to it, what we can do is, right now my UCX, which is the X, Y, and Z coordinates, are facing front, what does it say, or bottom. So if I drew a box, it will be on the side of my wine glass. What I want to do is make it on the bottom, so I have to change this, or I can later on rotate it using a 3D rotate. But instead of that, I'm going to change it over here. I want to go to home, and where it says world here, I'm going to change it to top. Nope. Sometimes you have to just guess front. And you can see that my X and Y coordinates are different. Now they're actually facing this way, so whenever I draw, it draws in the X and Y. If you don't have this toolbar and you want to get to this, what you want to do is right click here on any of your tools, and your command that you're looking for is UCS2. Oops, that was my material. UCS2 is the exact same thing. You can see that both of them are front. So if I change this one should change also. I'm in the front view. I'm going to draw a box or rectangle or whatever you want to call it, like so. I'm not going to extrude it, but I'm going to extrude it very little because I don't need to make it a super thickness. That should be enough. And now what I need to do is I have to make sure that I'm not hiding my wine at all. I'm going to move it up first. And I'm going to actually draw a line across this box. The problem with realistic is that anything you create becomes black, so that's why I like using conceptual, because it's gray and you can actually see lines on it and so forth. So I'm going to draw a line from midpoint to midpoint to get the center of my square or rectangle. And I'm going to move my wine by selecting it, going M for move, space or enter. And I'm going to rotate around to make sure I get from the bottom. I get to the center of the bottom, rotate back and select the midpoint of my line. And I'm going to delete that construction line I drew up. By selecting it, clicking delete, or you can do erase. I have my object on it, on my little platform, which is great, but the platform of course needs a material. Go back to my material list, and let's see what I'm going to add. I'm going to pick something interesting. I'm going to pick a metal because I know it's reflective, because we're going to add a light to it. It's going to make it a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to pick oh, it's painted. Steel machine, yeah, that should be fine. So I added a new material to my object. If I want to view it, I can always go to render, or I can type it in, render. This is the only downfall. It does take a little bit while because I have it still set up as I still have it set up as presentation, so it does a lot of detailing, and you can see actual reflection of it inside from the actual block of steel I placed underneath. You guys can't see it on this screen, but on my screen the block's still there. So I'm gonna still keep it there, but I'm gonna add a light to it. So I would pay attention to this because we're gonna go through lights. To do lights is the same rendering tool. It's your third key right here, light. If you want, you can also go to, where's it, render, and you have your options here. Same exact thing, except it doesn't look, the icon changed. And here are your options. Actually, that's a web. That's actual new light for 2011. 2010 did not have this. I'll have to freshen up on that, and I'll teach you guys that too. But right now we're just going to use we're going to be using a spotlight. But before we actually select this and use it, what I need to do is set up where I want a spotlight to start from, where I want it to be positioned. To do this, I will have to draw a line, probably on the outside of my material, to reflect in. So I'm going to change my UCX first. I'm going to change it to so I can draw a line going up like so. I'm using ortho, so I make sure it's going up. And this is just a construction line. It's not supposed to be, shown later. I can just delete it. It's just going to help me position my flashlight. So if I was holding a flashlight, I'll be holding it from here because that's my arm. That's what the idea is. Where are you holding your flashlight, and then where are you pointing that flashlight to? That is how our spotlight works. It even shows you a flashlight. You click on that. It's going to prompt you to the sunlight and light from point light spot blah 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 is turned off. What do you want to do? So when you draw any object in the beginning, there's always a light. Otherwise, you won't be able to see your object. This will prompt you to. It's going to turn off all the lights except whatever you have created, which is right now we're using only a spotlight. So it will only have that spotlight. There will be no other lights around. You're in a dark room and you only have that flashlight. So I'm going to turn off the default light, which was recommended too. And we're going to select it from here. It even shows you a flashlight. So that's where I'm holding it, and I want it to face this way. You can name this flashlight because it's going to give you, you're going to keep on adding lights, so you might want to name it. But if not, it's just going to go to a default name. I think it's light 1 or something. And there's other options: intensity factor, status, photometry, hotspot, fall off, shadow. I don't know how to say that word. Filter color. So there's a lot of options that you have to play around with. If you're, if you become expert and you know exactly how light you want. A lot of there's actual light technicians working on this. So, but this is just a brief explanation of it. I don't want to go into these things because I can't even explain them. You just have to, if you change one, you will see what happens. I can't explain what the light actually does because I am not a light expert. So what we're going to just do is click enter, and it's going to set that up. So you have that light. You can click on it, and you will see the area of intensity. The first area is intense light. The second area is less intense. And it also tells you the depth. So you can see that my light ends up to here, which is not good because this area here will not have any light. So what I have to make sure is I select, there's a center arrow, it should be over here somewhere. Oh, there it is. Where you can stretch it out down. Oh, that's the outsides. Oops. Rotate correctly. So you can expand the outside layer and reduce it if you want. So it depends on how strong your light is. what kind of, so you can make it huge like that, or you can make a special spot light that you really want. But the one I'm trying to figure out right now is the option to extend it. It's, oh, there it is. Make sure your ortho might be a factor, so keep that in mind. It stretches the whole thing. So you can play around with those blue points. The one I'm still looking for, here we are. You can move it back, but I'm going to just move it forward because I still got them. Remember, ortho at this point may cause a lot of issues and be annoying to you, like it is to me. And I'm just going to move it over. The key thing that I do a lot, and you may find helpful, is if something's in the way, either move it over at a specified distance, but make sure you have ortho on, and you can always move it back. So if I'm moving this, I'm moving it, say 100. 100, and I can play around with my lights. There's that arrow I'm looking for. Right. Oh, I know why. I figured. My UCX. You gotta watch out with the UCX, because if that's screwed up, it's gonna screw up where your pointing is of the blue points. It's gonna snap to areas. So it's one of those difficult things that you have to play around with, and hopefully you get it corrected. There we go. See, I changed the UCX, and now I don't have an issue. And I extended the light, so the light actually reaches farther away. And I can move this back using ortho at 100. So it's exactly in the same exact position that it started off with, except I fixed the light already, so it's actually showing everything now. Now all I have to do is delete that construction line I used, and I can go to my rendering, where the fun stuff begins. You can see I'm using a laptop. So, of course, I didn't zoom in close enough so you guys can't see it that well. So again, I will zoom close and render it. Oh my. Okay, I'm gonna pause the video because this is taking forever. Alright, so what we're gonna do now is do a rendering of our glass or cup or whatever you drew. What we want to do is get to the render tools. To do that, you can right click on the toolbar, any toolbar, and then go to render. This should pop up. If you don't use this, you can go to render tab over here, and it has the same exact stuff. It might be a little bit harder to find. Alright, don't click on this until you're ready with the material, because it's going to render your object without the material on it. So what we want to do is go to our materials browser, which is that same symbol as we see here. We click on that. It may take you a little bit longer to upload. Now mine's a little bit open, my screen's kind of small, sorry about this, but that's how my projector's set up. So, and here you have so many different options, you know, that you can pick from ceramic to fabric. Which fabric, you know, some people want to learn about fabric, so they're pretty cool ones. Actually, I think there's a Scottish one that I like. I use for my furniture. Yeah, there. I think that one's it. So you can select the ones you want, and then we'll actually put into your materials tab area where it saves them. So Global is our regular no material object. Then you can just keep on adding. So we can also use aluminum. And there's actually glass in here too, which is great. I recommend trying one of the glasses too later on, because we're going to use lights, and actually light can go through the glass, so you'll see cool visual effects. Alright, so we picked the material. You guys can pick whatever you want. Just drag it up here for now so you guys know which one you're using. If you really know exactly which one you want to use right off the bat, what you can just do is just drag it and click it onto the material, onto the solid object, and that material will be placed on it, and it'll come in here right off the bat because it's already being used. But if not, just select it, you're dragging it, it's going to add on to this. You'll see that happen if your object is in, what kind of view am I in? I think I was in realistic. If I was in conceptual, you won't see it, but it's there. If you go back to view, visual styles, realistic, it'll actually come up with the realistic view with the material. Which, for smaller objects like this, it's okay, but for bigger objects, I would watch out for your computer, because your computer may not be able to handle all the material on your objects. So actually, this one came out perfectly, because you can even see the fabric came out exactly the way I would actually want it. So we have that. Where our next object is, once you have a material on your object, you can minimize this and get smaller, like so. And what we're going to do is we're going to render it. But before we do this, I want you to go to the advanced render settings. I think it's down here. It's the same exact, this whole area is like this icon, but except this has more detail. So I prefer using this one, but you can also use this one. You can see they're both saying medium. That's how it's representing it. If you want more graphically, make it more graphically pleasing, I would do presentation. But definitely do a lower rate first before, because it takes a longer time to do the presentation. So you can see if that's the material you want, and then go ahead with the presentation. Now I know I want this material, so I'm just going to do presentation. So that changes both of them because that's the same exact thing. And now if you select this item right here where it says render, or you click over here, same exact option, click on it, it will render it in a new window where you can save the file as a JPEG or a BIP. And I have something like that. So gives you the options, information about your image, what size it is, what view you're using. You're using a current view, what render present it is, and what time you did it, and so forth, and how long it took to render it. And there's other information if you're really into specifications about colors, light, shadow, and samples. This would be important to you. Now I'm going to exit this one out because I don't want to save it because it's kind of too small. I want it to fill up my screen. So to do this, what you can do is, right now it's set up as window, which means it opens up a new window when it's doing the rendering. Viewport will just open up a viewport showing the render in your screen, which you may want, may not want, but I usually like using the window. I'll show you what I mean by viewport. So if I do that, and this is viewport, and I click render, it's going to render right on my screen. Now I always have the sense of it taking a little bit longer. I've never timed it, but I believe it takes longer, and it's, you just move it a little bit and you lose it. The other ones you can always save and see how you progress, because every time you do it. So now I'm going to go back to window. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more so I can get more of the image. I have a presentation. I'm going to click render. It gets bigger, but see, my previous one, it already has a autosave, so it's still there. I can view it if I wanted to. At least I should be able to. Oh, still going. I hope your computers aren't as slow as mine. See, I can view the first one and I can view the second one. So it saves each one. So if I like this one more, great, then I'll use this one. But it looks like I need to zoom in even more to fill up the complete page. So again, I can go back in there, zoom in more, one more click, and then I can do render. The other option, if you don't feel like going, close up and trying rendering it so you can fill up the whole window, is you can go to crop. Crop allows you to just crop an area that you want rendered, but the problem with crop is it will only do a viewport. It will never do a window. So you have to take that into consideration. And there's other options that I want to go through. You can pick up the output size. Of course, bigger will take longer and it will be probably less graphically detailed. So I prefer using 640 by 480, or you can make up your own size. The other option for instead of view, you're rendering the view, or crop that you're rendering, you can do a selected. So if you select an object and then you click enter, jeez, it will render it as so. But that should give you an option. Like there. There we go. I did a selected render. See, but that still shows you the view. I don't know why they actually have two different ones for actual view and selected, because it's the same thing. But the idea about that is actually if you have more than one item and you just want to see one piece to be rendered, you just select that one piece. That's what the selected item rendering is. And after that, you guys actually can play with materials. Again, try glass. Glass is pretty interesting. But don't use the clear glass because, well, you can use it, but it's boring. So see, I use glass, and I'm going to do not selected view. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more, do a window, exposure. I can't. Okay. But the others are really intense stuff that you have to really read into the book about, and it's just impossible to explain unless you just do it. You can't. It's like trying to explain a material. It's like trying to explain light. What is light? So, one of those unexplainable things. You just have to try it to see it, to understand what it does. So that's glass, but that's glazed glass. If you put an item behind it, you'll see a difference in the actual color of the material because you're seeing through it into the background. Alright, that concludes rendering of our class.